Welcome to the Scientific Sense podcast, where we explore emerging ideas from science, policy, economics, and technology. My name is Gill Eapen. We talk with world's leading academics and experts about their recent research or general areas of topical interest. Scientific Sense is an unstructured conversation with no agenda or preparation. We cover a wide variety of domains where new discoveries are made and new technologies are developed on a daily basis. We are most interested in how new ideas affect society and help educate the world how to pursue a rewarding and enjoyable life rooted in science, logic, and information. We seek knowledge without boundaries or constraints and provide unedited content of conversations with researchers and leaders who love what they do. A companion blog to this podcast can be found at scientificsense.com, and this podcast is available on over a dozen platforms and directly at scientificsense.net. If you have suggestions for topics, guests, and other ideas, please send them to info@scientificsense.com, and I can be reached at gill@eapen.info. My guest today is Professor Sašo Tomažič, who is a professor of electrical engineering and the head of the Laboratory of Information Technology at the University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. He has authored or co-authored more than 200 scientific papers in the field of ICT and signal processing. However, since 2006, when he predicted in his lectures at several conferences the crisis that occurred 2 years later, he has been engaged in research on the causes of economic crises and the measures that would be necessary to prevent them in the future. Welcome, Sašo.
Hello, welcome to you too.
Thank you. So I want to discuss your book entitled Imagine Non-Profit Society, Utopia or Necessity. Rather than starting at the beginning of the book, I would like to go to part 2 of the book, where you have some suggested solutions to the problems you describe. But before you get there, let's define the problem to set the context for the solutions that you suggest. You say, to avoid constantly recurring crises, wars, and ecological disaster in the future, and I guess you can add pandemics to it now, the world urgently needs a transition from the current socioeconomic system, which is based on the profit of capital, towards a new system that will be based on different foundations, to, you say, a non-profit socioeconomic system, or more simplistically, a non-profit society. So you want to talk a bit about the problems to set the context for some of the solutions that you suggest?
Yes, of course. I think that from just physical parts of view, the current economic system is unsustainable. That's the problem. This system, as it is, for it to function well, it needs economic growth.
Yeah.
But economic growth is exponential. So, for instance, about 2% yearly economic growth is required for this system to normally function. But in 100 years, it means 10 folds. In 200 years, it's been 100 folds. In 300 years, it means 1,000 folds. So at this growth, we will need in 300 years 1,000 times more energy than we use now, and this is impossible.
That presumes, Sašo, that we don't get efficiencies from new technologies and so on. So, energy equation today largely driven by fossil fuels. Maybe in 50 years we would completely change that equation, perhaps.
No, this I cannot agree with this. This growth has two parts.
Yeah.
It's part of production, and part of consumption. Already today, we cannot consume everything that is produced. Can we consume 1,000 times more or 1,000,000 times more in 400 years? It's impossible.
So your argument is that there is a limit to how much humans can consume. So any system that is predicated on a 2% growth in consumption has to temper that or come to a halt at some point.
Yes, that's true. Also, production and consumption, they're just two parts of the same equation, Also, we cannot accept for instance, today, nearly every person in this world has one mobile device. So in 200 years, they will have 100 devices each, and in 1,000 years, 100 million devices. It's impossible, That's just my idea is that the system which requires growth is fantastic to the point where there is not enough of everything. But when we reach the point where there is already too much, there is so much advertising needed today, not to produce, but to sell it, because we can produce much more than we can sell.
Right. And so the argument is around consumption that cannot grow infinitely, like the economy apparently is assuming. But you have larger issues, right? So even tactically, not even going 100 years, even the contemporary situation, you say, you take the 8.5 billion people that we have, 1 billion you call the golden billion. Has a living standard, but the remaining 7.5 billion people can only dream of the golden billion standard of living. And so we have a big issue even today that is sort of people put into two different buckets, right?
Yes, it's true. It's also the same problem, because when the profit is the only motive for doing something, the capital accumulates in one point. Now at this moment, 5% has a financial capital like the other half of human population. It's growing.
Right. So you're saying that such a system is inherently unstable. And so as we think about solutions around this, so conceptually at the highest levels also, you're saying, we can conceive some solutions, but you can't really implement them because you say human consciousness is a stumbling block to, any sort of new ideas that you can implement. And so what do you mean by human consciousness?
I mean this, I could say also public opinion in a large sense, what people think, what people believe, what people think is good, what should be done. And, all this mechanism of advertising certain ideas make people believe that the current system is the best possible system. They don't even realize that it is unstable.
Right. Yeah, it's also let me make a statement, and we can debate if it's true or not. We don't really have much data to say that humans are very different from animals. 50,000 years of human evolution got us to a point that our objective functions are reasonably similar to animals' objective function, I would argue, which basically takes an energy and a need to perpetuate the genes. And so you seem to have some expectations of humans here.
Of course I have. I think that humans still, I don't know, humans are the only animals which can construct things. Maybe you have some ants, they construct, but to produce new ideas, new technology, to have philosophy, to have all these things, it's just another level of consciousness. I don't say that animals are not conscious, but the levels of consciousness are different for animals, and for human beings.
Okay, so you call it collective consciousness, and you say so a gradual transition towards a non-profit society, that is the solution that we are going to discuss in detail, requires a change in the collective consciousness. A non-profit society cannot be based on negative values, you say, such as egoism, greed, envy, and competitiveness, which are the key drivers of progress in capitalism. And you want to replace the human traits into solidarity, cooperation, honor, honesty, mutual respect, understanding, tolerance, and personal integrity. When we look around, do we have any indication that these values, humans are progressing toward these values?
Oh, yes, we have. We have, for instance, when some disaster happens, like earthquake or flood or something like that, humans help one another. Most people are good. There are some psychopaths or sociopaths, but it's small percentage.
Yeah.
In normal, people are good, but they are educated in different ways. I think that education is very important in this matter. If you are educated to sport, be competitive, beat this one, be better than he is, not be good, be better.
Right.
There's a big difference.
Yes. And you point out some empirical data. So you say in the ancient Rome, as well as much later in the US, slavery was taken for granted and in no way controversial. And owing to the gradual shift in the collective consciousness, slavery came to be deemed unacceptable and was ultimately abolished. So you have some, sort of long-term longitudinal data that says, things that we believe today that could be essentially maybe deemed completely unacceptable in the future. And so what you're saying is that it's worth thinking about, really different ways to organize society and have the characteristics of a modern society.
Yes, maybe some people will say I'm communist. I don't know what, but they just have wrong idea. Stalinism was not communism. That's Stalin's dictatorship. It had nothing to do with communism. So that's why I avoid the term communism. But I think that still one of the best analysis of economic system was Marx's Capital. Mm-hmm. He made one mistake. He said that you come to socialism or communism with revolution. It's a big mistake. Why? Because people who lead revolution are usually sociopaths. And then they come to the power, and it cannot work. It's, I think that something can happen only through really people understanding that is good for them.
Yeah.
That's not bad for them. That's good for them. Also for the leaders. Good kings in the past knew that if people are happy, they will be good.
Right. Yeah, so let's get into some prescriptive ideas that you have from an improvement perspective. So one axis that you discuss in detail is monetary reform. And you say one of the first steps toward a more stable system should be in changing the method of issuing money. Central banks would take over the right to create new money from commercial banks and have a high degree of independence from governments in controlling the amount of money in circulation. So you want to essentially take the power away from central banks, who essentially create money through the multiplier effect that is afforded to them by the current system. And you say new money would no longer be issued as loans, but transferred directly into the state budget as grant funds from the central bank. So do you want to talk a bit in detail about the components of monetary reform that you're suggesting?
Yes, it's also there is maybe one organization, New Money Foundation in London.
Yeah.
They really evaluated this system, but it's basically simple. New money is produced from nothing. So where is the reason that the state, which has central bank, and the central bank is owned by the state or country.
Yeah.
And this bank issue new money from nothing, and then state owes this bank money. It's illogical. But that's not the main problem. The main problem is that this new money is issued for interest.
Mm-hmm.
So if central bank issue 1 million euros and requires 2 million back, where can the state get these 2 million if central bank only printed 1 million?
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. This loan cannot be repaid. There is no theoretical way to repay this debt. And if there is some site, world debt clock, when you see that this world debt is increasing every second. And now it's about $200 trillion.
Right. So there are two issues there, right? So if I understand it correctly, one is the multiplier effect that commercial banks essentially create, let's call it fake money, based on the central bank issued currency. You don't want to have that. You want to take that out of the equation. So you want the federal bank, the central bank issued currency go directly to the states, and then get allocated, really from a portfolio management perspective, get allocated into societal goals. And the other aspect you say is that the interest equation that we have in the system, which is primarily the banks have a differential in interest, right, between the depositors. Depositors get almost nothing, and whoever is taking the loan end up paying an interest back to the bank. So you want to eliminate both of these things, right?
Yes, but it's not just that the depositor has lower interest than the bank.
Yeah.
The problem is that the bank creates money from nothing.
Yes.
When you take a loan in a bank, they just write a number in your account, nothing else.
Yeah.
They want interest for this money.
Right.
It's crazy. It's really crazy, but it is so.
Yeah.
So it's no way that this debt can be only forgot. The banks forgot this debt, and that's what happens in crisis. So crises are necessary.
Right, and you cite a real situation with the EU, where essentially the formation of the EU took away the monetary flexibility that all the EU states had, right? So now you have a situation where some states are going to fail and essentially get bailed out by the system.
Yes, it's already happened. It's happened to Greece, it's happened to Spain, it's happened to, they bankrupt nearly. So they had now to take big loan and big, these measures, which are some totally insensible measures, because in this austerity, in this system is crazy. But right. I am for austerity, but in this system, when we need economic growth, austerity does not help.
Right. And so in your suggested new way of doing this, there are two major attributes. The new money that central banks create to control its circulation should be deposited directly into state budgets as DAN funds rather than loans, you say. And governments would then put this money into circulation by spending it for the purpose of covering part of their obligations. And so in the EU context, the central bank essentially gives allocations to the various members of the EU.
Yes, so in it would be like, there are some great projects in EU, some Horizon 2020 or other projects which are financed by EU. And this, so now states have to pay to Europe so that there is this budget. But if the new money would be created in this way, this will reduce payments needed from countries for different states to pay to the EU, and this money could be used for those big project, research project, or whatever is in agenda of European Commission.
Yeah, and so you want to sort of take away the middleman there. And also you want commercial banks, you say, would no longer be able to issue loans that are not based on money received from central banks. So, the sort of the fake money that they create should not exist. Commercial banks would be prevented from issuing new money as loans, which now makes up about 95% of the total amount of money in circulation. And so in both cases, you're basically taking away the middleman, right? Central bank directly to the state.
Yeah, yes, I take middleman because now you see, we have real sector and we have financial sector. Real sector, real economy produces something, some goods, some services, whatever, and we have financial sector which does nothing. But real sector owes to financial sector. Is it logical? It is not.
Yeah, the problem is always implementation. So, you say, unfortunately, it's doubtful that the said reform or any other like it will happen in the EU. To begin with, it would require the consensus of all Eurozone member states, an agreement that will be near impossible to reach without a proper shift in the collective consciousness. And so, in some sense, you're saying society has to grow up before you can get here.
Yes, that is the reason I wrote this book. Some people may understand more what is really happening and what would be better, and that there are better ways to function. This is the main reason.
Yeah. And along the same lines, so the other part of this puzzle, you say system in which money is used strictly as a medium of exchange rather than capital may be established in parallel to the existing monetary system. And we have actually an example of this, right, in Switzerland?
Yes, we have many examples of this, but these are all small regional things. The greatest is YIR Bank in Switzerland, which lends money without interest. It's money. This is special. It's called local trade exchange system, where money have the role the money should have, only as mean of exchange. To understand this, you just have to have two, one who is selling and one who is buying.
Mm-hmm.
And now there is no money. What can he do? For instance, one buys something and he wrote IOU note.
Yeah.
And this IOU note, the other person can give it back and get something back for this IOU note. So this IOU note is basically money.
Yes.
And the LED system works just like that. The total amount of money in such a system is zero.
Right.
Some owes, some are owed, and when there is no debt, the money in the system is zero, and it appears as it is needed. Whenever it's needed, it appears, and disappears when it's needed. It's not needed anymore.
Yeah, so it's sort of a bartering, going back to WIR Bank in Switzerland. It's sort of a bartering system, but whatever is being bartered is given a value, and that value is then kept in a ledger, right?
Yeah.
So you have something like 45,000 small and medium-sized enterprises and around 15,000 individuals transacting there. So it's not a small system, and you say it's pretty easy to set up. Yeah.
Yes, it's quite a big system, but in the scope of a world monetary system, it's tiny. If you see the old monetary system, it represents about 7 or 5% of Swiss trade, something like that. And it's only Swiss trade, so it's not big, but it's large, Yes, it's function. And what is interesting, in times of crisis, financial crisis, the percentage of using this system increased, and when there is no crisis, it decreases, So that's why Swiss was not affected with those financial crises.
Yeah,
small enterprises, usually small enterprises are affected with this crisis, and in Swiss, it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's sort of, I don't want to call it a shadow system, but it offers flexibility to the financial system. The way that WIR is working, they have sort of their own currency, right? It's really for an accounting currency, WIR franc, CHW, and as you say, it kicks into gear when there is a discontinuity, and there is, the financial system can really cope with that discontinuity. You can go to the basics here, which is really putting a value on the real asset that is being transacted, and then keeping that value in the ledger rather than issuing money.
You don't in this system. You don't even need nothing in ledger. Everybody issue his own money. When you write IOU note, you issued money.
Right.
And when you get this IOU note back, you destroy it. You destroy this money. It's out.
But somebody has to keep the records, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's the role of the bank in this system. Right. It's basically notary service, which just takes records who owes whom how much.
Right. And as you say, again, for such a system to be in place, many details still need to be clarified, such as collaterals for non-performing loans, the method of limiting negative and positive account balances, ensuring investment funds, and so forth. You say, luckily, most of these details have already been worked out by the WIR bank. So it's a functioning bank, and it has been for a long time, right?
Yes, I think that the most of these problems were already solved, and there is also many small systems. For instance, around Kimsey, one professor issued money like that, and they have local trade in this system. So I think, yes, if you go larger, I'm sure that some problem would occur. But I mean that they're easier solvable as the problem of interest exponentially grows.
Right. I want to jump into another item that you talk about. You say capitalism has built in positive feedbacks which make it unstable. To restore stability of the economic system, it's therefore necessary to terminate the positive feedback process. And you suggest progressive tax on profit reduces that positive feedback. But you also suggest sort of a progressive tax on earnings. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yes, this is also from. I normally, my job is analyzing systems and stability of systems, in digital signal processing, and in the systems which have positive feedback. If the output positively affects input, to increase it, and then it increases output, it increases input, and it becomes unstable. And let's first see what is positive feedback in this system. One, interest. Capital, interest increases, is more capital, more interest, more capital, more interest. This is typical positive feedback. Another positive feedback is labor market. When everything is good, people had good jobs, have money, they buy, there are new jobs. But when it becomes turns over, people are losing jobs, they have no money, more people is losing job, less people has money, more people loses job, and it goes down. This is typical positive feedback.
Okay. And so your suggestions, most countries have some sort of progressive tax on profits. You are suggesting also a progressive tax on earnings, not just on profits, to sort of dampen the positive feedback effect.
Yes, I even suggest more, not only positive taxes on profit, but avoiding profit at all. But not in accountant definition of profit, because accountant definition of profit, they said, oh, we have profit and now we pay workers more. No, it's they earned it. It's the profit is which, when you cover all expenses and pay all workers and all are good paid, and also you have amortization of your machines or buildings and everything, what's left? This is profit, and this is more than you earned. Profit is more than you earned with your work or what you're doing. So this profit is problematic because it's positive feedback.
Right.
This is positive feedback.
Right.
Avoiding profits, so that's the name, non-profit society. And also this, as you said, taxation of income. Yes, it's negative feedback, because if you earn, you come to a certain level, and then you don't want, because taxes are becoming too high, so you limit some roof how much you can earn.
Right, right. So another aspect which I find very compelling is strengthening social security and social security in the larger context here, not just social security in the U.S. Um, and and then you say here, countries with high level of social security have far less crime. In this day and age, there should be no difficulty in meeting the basic needs of the entire global population. Social security might be strengthened by minimizing profits. But one of the areas that there are a lot of debates, as you know, both in the U.S. and elsewhere, is this idea of universal basic income.
Yeah.
And you cite actually an experiment that was done in Canada, right? And the data was there, but only recently the data was analyzed. You want to talk a little bit about that, DOF in Canada?
Yes, so this was experiment, very successful experiment. I must mention that now new experiments ongoing. I don't know yet results, but I believe they will be good. But in this all expectation that people will not work when they get a basic income, it's proved to be false. The work hours for men fall about 2 or 3%. I don't know by heart, and for women a little more because they have to care for their child.
Yeah.
So, but it was a minimum drop of work hours. So this does not hold, and people. All results of this experiment were very positive, but were abandoned because, there were other interests.
Yeah, so this was something that was done a long time ago, like 1973, 1977.
Yeah.
And the UBI was quite small, $350 per person. And if you look at the data now, during that 4-year time period where the experiment was run, you say that there were a lot of positive effects, such as children improved their school performance, number of hospitalizations declined sharply, a significant drop in domestic violence, mental illnesses. And so all those positive effects exist. And the challenge against UBI sometimes, as you say, is people just will stop working, was proven to be untrue because you saw only about 1% fewer working hours for men, only about 5% fewer working hours among women. So it seems like the supporters of UBI, what they say is actually borne out in this experiment.
Yes, it is. And now I think that I don't know now by heart, I have no data here, but I think in Finland is now performed such experiment, and in Netherlands, I think.
Yeah.
But and I think that they will get to similar results. There were also other experiments, for instance, in much before, I don't know by heart the dates, but they give homeless people some amount of money in London. I think it was in London, and they improve their life. They get work. They get they were no more homeless people. So all those experiments shows that I don't know, Bowling for Columbine, if you saw that movie.
Yeah.
The director Moore shows that countries with more social security has less crime. Very simple.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are two issues. One is sort of the initial conditions. It's really difficult to go from absolutely nothing to $100,000 in net worth. it's actually a lot easier, almost infinitesimally or infinitely easier, I should say, to go from 100,000 to 1 billion. And that is not something that's well understood. So there is an initial conditions problem. And then there is, the stream of income, which is sort of the downside risk management aspect, right? If you continuously worry about the downside risk, it's going to show up in healthcare expenses. It's going to show up in all sorts of societally bad things. And so if you have that downside protection, you actually gain a lot from it societally, right?
I didn't quite understand what you wanted to tell. Why? Can you elaborate a little more? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah. So the first thing, about initial conditions, meaning somebody who does not have anything is going to have great difficulty to climb out of it.
Yeah.
Which is the homeless situation that you described.
Yeah.
The
idea, now I can see, the idea is that you just provide the basic level of decent living to everybody.
Yeah.
Not some high standard or some, yachts in islands and whatever, airplanes, but basic living. And in this state of technology, which is on Earth now, it is possible.
Mm-hmm. And then, you talk about many of the things that people are thinking about, where we have what economists will call market failures. And they are things like healthcare, expensive schooling, public transportation. And, if these sort of things exist in the sort of the downside risk management system, then people can get healthy, they can get educated, and it has significant societal returns in the long run, right? So, what people say is that these things are costly, but they're not looking at the entire system cost in the long run, I think.
Yes, of course. This idea that something is costly, it's wrong. It's only money which is produced by banks from nothing.
Right, yeah.
Yes, you want to build something. You need people who build it. And now you have people, you have material, but bank that do not give you money, and I cannot build it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so Saso, in conclusion, so you have a set of ideas here. We know some of the problems that exist. It's not just one country; it's all around the world. You yourself said that some sort of social consciousness, an enhancement, an increase in social consciousness is needed before some of these ideas could go into implementation. Where do you think we will be in, say, 5 years, 10 years down the road?
It's really hard to say. Many things are happening around the world. If you see, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, nobody knew the word ecologic.
Yeah.
Then the idea slowly grow, and now everybody talk. It's ecology, food. Everything. Be aware of pollution and so on. It's slowly growing. There are some. It's spreading around slowly, but it does. So
you're optimistic that
I hope that those who are in power will not block it too much. You look at the US. United States. The people who are really in need, they have no money, they have social problems, they vote against free schools, against free healthcare, against universal income.
Right.
It's that's the consciousness.
Yeah, that's consciousness. That's also back to what you said before, which is education.
Yeah.
And so, we often hear, for example, people are okay with Affordable Care Act, but they don't like Obamacare. Which is the same thing as in the United States. So, the politicians spin it, and it's very easy to get large number of people believe in something without really understanding what they're believing in.
Yes, this was during the Goering in the Second World War said, if you say some lie 3 times, it becomes true.
That's right. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, this has been great, Sašo, and thanks so much for spending time with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Good luck with what you're doing here. It's very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.